Malo e la maria ho eki ka koe lere ia tonga ko be mo me mai ki e polo kalama Talanoa Kaungafononga. We are so happy at this time to have Dr. Siale Foliaki with us. Ke Kaufakataha i Talanoa koe ka venga koe whai kia Talanoa Talanoa Kaungafononga. Koe Talanoa ki he Laulanu koe hoko i he Ngãue na moe api ako. Aia koe discrimination at school and also at work. Pea hange koe ngahi ka venga na as whai mea e ngahi Talanoa me ngahi polo kalama ko o si o os mahino. We talked about Siale, the discrimination. It's a global issue.
Right.
It's not just happening in Tonga, just to the ke pehe ko ka kai Tonga e pe hoko ai. Ka ku hoko ia i he ngahi culture ke he ke. Pea mo ngahi wheitu ke he ke. Mo e kai ngata pehe ngahi fakahilihili'i ka wai pa mo e ngahi tawhaaki ke he ke. Pa ko tui ko e Talanoa ko e te mau whakahoko atu i he Talanoa ko e ni ke toi sio ange ko ha ai Laulanu e ne hoko ko i he Ngãue anga ka e maafo ke ngahi ke api ako. Kaufakataha pe mo Ilaisaane pe wia ia e whiawhia lahi i e whainga maari e ko ni. We are so happy to have Dr. Foliaki with us. Ko e te utuka whainga maari e ko ni. I'll leave it to you Siale ke whaiange Talanoa ko kawenga discrimination at work and also at school.
Okay. Malo, Penisimani. Ko whiawhia tau ki whakataha au ne. Ke whaia ki Talanoa ki subject ko ne maho inga.
O ia.
Halo, tuki e koe, Ilaisaane. Malo e la maari. Penisimani, malo tau. Whakataha. Ko issue ko ni ko e opmone hola. It's a global issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what does it represent? At a deep level, there's always a sense of prejudice that we have to deal with. And that prejudice, when it comes to looking at us as individuals, but looking at us in terms of the colour of our skin or from the culture that we come from, if there's prejudice in that way, we define it as being racist. So racism is a prejudice towards differences in ethnicity and culture. You know, how does that play out in the New Zealand context? I'd like to give an example of two cousins of mine that travelled to Australia, and I was thinking about it in preparation for our podcast today. Similar background, all my cousins ko ni na whalau ki Australia. O kumeha muikia. They set up lives there. Both of them got good jobs. When I talked to them, I hadn't seen them for many years, and I went across to ask them because I thought that New Zealand was a country that the relationships between the different ethnic groups, it's probably because of the Treaty of Waitangi, that there seems to be a greater emphasis on ensuring that our school environment, that our work environment, that we address racism as it arises. But I was interested, I hadn't seen my two cousins for many years, and I asked them about the racism that they experienced in the workplace, because they were both working, and what it was like for them at school when they first got there, because they were just old enough to experience school life in Australia. And one of the boys said to me that as far as he's concerned, he's hardly had any experience of racism, both in the workplace or in the schooling system when he was there. And the other cousin reported to me that almost on a daily basis I'll experience racism or prejudice in Ngãue, and especially when he was younger, when he went across to Australia. So I was thinking about two things. I think that prejudice and racism, it exists in institutions, and I want us to be able to talk about that. But I'm also interested in the way that, because there are some things that are outside of our control, and we should still deal with that, institutionalized racism. I think that's something that as a community, we're all invested in that. Not just us as Tongans, but the Pacific community, Go Māori and that treaty, but also the people that run our hospitals, they run our workplaces, they run our schools. they want to create an environment where all of the children feel included, right? And they feel safe and they feel like they belong. And that means you can't have racism or prejudice of any type in schools. And I want us to talk to that. But I also was hoping that this conversation, there are every day, the people that are going to watch this podcast are going to interact and they're going to experience racism. I'm also hoping that we can have a conversation about how we might respond.
Yes.
Because of my two cousins, one of them, what is it about his attitude or what is it about him as a person that there must be racist things going on around him, but what is it about his personal qualities that means that he doesn't experience in a negative way, that he must be working with or interacting with those interactions in a way that's still positive. And the other cousin found it very difficult, the work environment and how he was dealing with the racism that he was perceiving every day. So those are just some of my opening comments, Ben.
Ko mo be mai fo ko ni ke Talanoa ko ni ma fa ke Talanoa. Hange ko ke kula ke ai to ke ta sia pe ko ko fa more pe na ke fulo la he ku hanga fa fe lo ke ato ai to ke ta sia ko to ke ta Foliaki ko e psychiatrist. To ke tā matao ia ki he uilere whakaata mai. Pea, o ke kai ka mea si ieni ke proklama Talanoa Kaungafononga. Pea kai ngata ai te toi hoko a to ke tā Foliaki ko e tarekita ki he tawhaki ko ia o e mental health ai Pasifiki i he Ngãue ko e whonuani New Zealand. Ko ia wai e lau ai tā puaki pa mo e ngoi aupito ki he tau Talanoa ko ni. O kai whake lau o pehe e Siale. Ko e Laulanu, o ku Kaufakataha, go together with violence. Pe aku ne uesia, it will also affect ai mo'uilelei ko e atamai. Pe kai ngata ai, o te kaufo pa moeongo, o emotions, i he mo'ui ko e kakai. Ke whaka ki Talanoa ke ta whaako ia.
And ko kore whamora pe Ben.
Oia.
O ku taimini o whangataa ke whakamatala ai u whakakaukau o kui I loto au whakatama.
Yes.
And ko kore morope ke tau viewers, ko ilo pe koe podcast o ka whaia aoni, podcast whakatama, ka koe some ideas and concepts. It's easier for me to explain in English. And so, racism at a personal level, Ben, it is designed to be offensive. Okay? It is meant to cause harm, right? But often the perpetrator of the racism isn't fully aware of just how the interaction, how racist it is.
Yes. Yes.
I can give you some examples, personal examples, right? So this notion of racial profiling, it's a really big deal. Particularly in American society now, right? To the extent that they're trying to legislate or put policies in place that you just can't randomly stop a car. Do you mean? There must be sufficient reason to pull a car over. You can't just look at the occupants and think that it's all right to stop that car when somebody's going about their legal business, right? Racial profiling at that level, they try to legislate against that. But if you walk into a shop, just simply to look for an item. Being of Polynesian background, there are times when we notice that we are being observed slightly differently to other people in the shop. And I often ask myself the question: to what extent can we try to stop what appears to me at times to be a very deeply held but sometimes unconscious bias? And often as Pacific Island people, we often experience forms of racism that we know that it's happening, but to what extent is it conscious or unconscious in the person that's interacting with us? And I just wonder if you have had any experiences like that.
Yes, and also I remember Siale, at work, I remember my uncles, when they migrated from Tonga, the migration story. They arrived in the 1970s, in terms of like promotion at work.
Yes.
Right, yep. What they mean here in Ngãue, they know Ngãue Malo.
That's right.
But how they view it. ko e palange o whakapiko ne wha mea ia, pe angere vai ke pūre ia. You know, ngahi mea ni ihi te kawe ngahi mea tāna e wha hoko e wha talanoa e mātua. It just, you know, be, ko ngahi comments, mo ngahi jokes. Like no tau no hanga tau ilo pera tau wha ita tō lahi anga ngā koe coconut. You coconut. Pea ita kakai. Ai ko hono lei polo i nau tōnu. I he ngahi lea, you know, derogatory comments. And also some jokes. Ko taha ko no withdrawal and isolation. Ko no wahe i nau tōnu ke nau maa whiohi mo nau tōnu. And even at school, like you said, due to gender, age, vai ngai Ngãue na to tonu ke anga na do ke futa mo tu ago ia. You're getting old, so we'll give the job to someone younger. But the best person is that old age person. No, don't again Ngãue. Ko nga ko fa no he talanoa e matua. Now, especially those that are migrating in New Zealand e taimi. But now, you know, the hard laborers.
Umali fo ke anga mo talanoa he. Naka Talanoa ko ke Laulanu ko he Ngãue anga. Ko mana tui pe fo ha ko me to nga ko wa fe mata ha ia. Mau ko ki Ngãue na mau ko o kili na ko lo he city. Ma tu ko fai ko e kili na ai ko ka kili na ko to la ta ha mau to lu pe se te ao ka Pasifiki. A ma ko pe se te ao no ai ko ka Tonga. Pe ma te ao ta ha o kili na he fare e ta pe o se mau kili na pa mai be ki me o fa hu ki he. Pa mau opo pa mau matuku. Ma foka tu e ao hoko ia ku wa mai supervisor ta la mai tu pa ki mo le beki me ko ki mai beki me ka te ao. Pa ko pe hat fai fra matala he o ku tala mai pe ko tala mai ka te ao. Fe mau mai he pure la hi ke fai ya nge tohi fra matala. Hai me nai hoko ko ki beki me. He pa kai ke po tala o ore o se fai Ngãue a honto fai te tohi a pongpong. Ma ha o fai ki tohi fra matala me nai hoko pa fra matala mono tai mi pe atu ke pure he. Baka tengo na Maria ato he pure, haore pure go te ao ha ke tohi, baka ne sio mo te ao, he. Baka pe ke pe ha ai ko me apena na fa matala ke tohi. Pe mai le vai te ao. Oh, ka yo amana ke usai o tohi. He? Baka sio to ko ki ai ba pe he. Oh, ka ke ore Ngãue ki ai ka pe he hokloto. Ai a ko sio me ko ha ki na ke sei polo i ko ia. Ko yo la ba ia tohi, he? Ko Ngãue pe e o he kai ke ka ko se ko pe na ne hanga whakatoka ngā i pe kai he pe osi ko ia pe hoka te mau Ngãue mahino ia na to mau e ta ona avega kai ke he be ki me Whaka tue mau Ngãue, hanga rewa he pure ia whakatoka ngā, o ko lawa o lea, o ko lawa o tohi, o wapeu hawe a kore mai ki a te ao, ke uhanga o traini a kau kilina fo o, pau talangi ki ai, ko Ngãue a supervisor, panda mai ka te ao, iyo ka kuhapa ki a kore at ka koe, ko tange, ka pau te ke kore ke whai Ngãue koe ia, te whia pe ke whai ka pau te ke hiki o wahenga, he ke kore ka te ao ke whai fwoi Ngãue ua, he fwoi taimi Ngãue pe e taha, ai koe wahe taha pe koe kilina, ka ke te tamai koe ke te supervisor mo te join e kau kilina, ai koe kusio atu koe ki ai Siale ka maa Penisimani, ki a te ao mo kusio atu he taimini, koe Laulanu ia, koe iwe ki lea na Ngãue ake Penisimani ke Laulanu, koe ki lea koe fakahilihili'i. Ai koe fakahilihili'i, koe te tō mai mea ko awu hili he, tō mai awu hili he. Ai koe mahua ka mau tolu, o si hanga he tama mene chago ni, o hili mau tolu he mau lalo taha ya ngai Ngãue anga. Pea hili mau tolu, o mau tae ako, hili mau tolu, o koe ke mau poto he rea whapaparangi, o koe ke mau poto he tohi. Pea hili rewa mau tolu koe tuunga e taha, o koe ke mau iluranga e lau e whonuan ke mea koe Ngãue. O mai rewa Ngãue e ua mo tolu ke mau whai, kai wahe pe ke whoi taim pe e taha pe. Kai ke, mako kusio koe ki ai, o mahu inga ke tauhanga o whakatoka ngai. Ke tau awea, ke tau whakatoka ngai, a hono fakahilihili'i ki tau tolu, ta ke ngata pe i he Ngãue a ngā. E lava foki ke tau hanga o whakatoka ngai ai, hono fakahilihili'i mo e tau whanau he ngai apiako nau i ai.
Koe ki point pe e ta, ki roi ai hopo re, he ki story na ke tala mai. Pe he ia o koe compliment ki a koe. Kone lawe, oksai ho tohi. Kai kia mahino ki ai, o racist in a comment. He ia koe compliment. Ka kone mone, racist in a comment ia, Fetokoni'aki moho poto he tohi tohi. Koe me whikaua, whenga ke whaiha Ngãue in a supervisory role, he kai ke whia te tonga koe, or promote koe ke he supervisory role, koe mea, that's a form of racism in itself. Ka change it au ki community he tai mini. Ki oi ka pau whiri hata ke promote i whaimahaki. I'll explain that ko hei ko Ngãue ai. Now you have to have a panel of 3. And in that panel you have to have somebody representative from their culture being interviewed. It's trying to protect the hospital from interviewing. If you just let Purepālangi get interview hata for promotion, then it's up to his subjective or her subjective opinion, right? So what they try to do now to protect against racism is they have a panel now, and then you have a CV, and you look at the CVs. You're not really allowed to look at the ethnicity, unless it's designed for its cultural specific role. So that they try to put into place practices that try to limit our. Somebody might have a bias, or they might be racist. It's the work policies that are designed to protect us all. Compared to the 1970s, that practice, it can't completely rule out racism, but it can protect. It can go some way towards improving the situation. And we should talk about the example. We won't name specific schools, right? But we've all been involved in examples of where it feels like the school might have already made a decision about the nature of what's going to happen to a young person, and we've all experienced that as it's almost like the school has already made up their decision.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? And not really had the type of conversation that allows us to really promote the support that you might provide for the child to enable them to stay in the school system. We've experienced that, and so. We've come a long way, but I still feel like we've got a long way to go.
That's right. Yes. I remember at school, in regarding with the discrimination at school, Siale, in Sane, our second son, our second son got a scholarship. And I remember I'll never forget what he shared with us when he told me and Sane. You shouldn't be here. Okay, but anyway, kana lava ki tama ko ni e au mosane o coach mafoha ke ground him and algo ki ako and porque taile va ta he to ta no forever foka ka fe fere va ba to ke na lava ko coach le na fa na and they are the one how ka ba wa lava is counselors o lava coach tamasi I o ki kai go worth mo value depending on si o ka kai ke and I think and now he's year 12, he make friends. Oku kako whaafano he tō lai. Nei ki Talanoa pe koe tō tahe apia koe e tāma. I think was ko ki tāma tahe niti. Kana e nā pe ki tāma kai ke sai. Koe uhi ko pressa koe Laulanu he apia koe.
Just a couple of comments, Ben. Fetokoni'aki moho historian ake Talanoa. The first contact student at Taha, it's a very negative one.
Yes.
He could have easily have found that experience so he could have easily just that one experience, right? But the story that we're going to tell today, when I think about it from a psychiatric training, when you look at 100 children, actually, even in a school like the majority of students, from a personality perspective, then like you said, he's progressed through the school. Friendship never. There'll be some Pacific boys at the school, but he's made some friends with some Palangi boys. Racism it's a global issue, but it's not a universal attribute that every person in a community shares. And when you really look at it, statistically, it's only a very small percentage of people that have the qualities where they enjoy whether it's psychologically or physically, putting down other people or hurting them. It's only probably statistically, we talk about a thing called antisocial personality disorder, as the way the doctors will put to it. The severe form of that, maybe about 3% of a population. So if you look at any big school, if there's 1,000 kids at the school or 2,000 kids at the school, there's going to be a percentage of children, that have that personality structure where they like mocking, teasing, putting down another person, but actually enjoy the process. Whereas a lot of the mocking and teasing at school, it's fun. It's not really designed to hurt. And some racist comments happen, but we have to make sure when we coach our children not to be too sensitive to the comments they make. Ka pata tau seo he parenting fakahilihili'i. Tongan parents, we're not hanging over our children, trying to protect them from falling over or every negative experience. Ko parenting fakahilihili'i, we only really step in ka pawe la vehata. And we sometimes listen to some of the harsh things that are said amongst children and young people. We don't intervene because to intervene and try to protect them too much, they don't develop that internal resilience.
Resilience, yes.
Yes. So our conversation today is about prejudice and racism at an organizational level, at a workplace. It's also in the school setting. And yes, we should always make sure we put policies and procedures in place to ensure that racism isn't preventing people from flourishing. But at the same time, there is an expectation, we should have an expectation that we coach young people into adult life, that they're not so sensitive to slightly negative remarks. I don't know how, like a handle fair, I get comment on that. Do you know what I mean? You can respond to that in different ways. I'm interested in how you responded.
Ko respond ko ki ai, but ko pehange ki ai. Yeah, I do get right. And I may be working here as a cleaner. I'm coming here to study.
Right.
And he looked and he said, "Oh, I didn't know that." Because ko pesete hiva o tau kirina, ko na Ngãue be na toko kirina. Ko Talanoa. I'm thankful for the opportunity ke wa Ngãue, but I'm going to have to resign the walo ako. But that's how I took it.
How you reacted, which tells me that your confidence and self-esteem is strong. I read a book when I was 16. I hadn't gone to university yet. It was a book written by a black South African man. His name was Stephen Biko.
Yes.
And he wrote a book called Black Consciousness. And I read in that book something very powerful for me, because he described what I was experiencing at high school. That sense of not quite, of being of the same value as the other students. Because there was Toxigo, Tamaki Island. And so I knew what he was saying, because I had a job at Eve's Pantry. And all the cleaners, because the lead guy just kept inviting young men from the community, because he knew us and he knew we'll work hard. But all the cleaners were brown. And as a young person, I was only 13, I thought all cleaners are brown. I didn't know that there were Palangi cleaners. That was your experience, right? And what Stephen Biko wrote, because we're talking about the school and we're talking about our workplace, but Stephen Biko was writing about what happens to a nation of people.
Yes.
He wrote some powerful words. He said that the fight for democracy in South Africa was going to be fought in the shanty towns for the hearts and minds of the children. What he was saying was, if the children, if you grow up in poverty, you can get a sense that's all that you are worth. What Stephen Biko was saying, that it was the responsibility of a country to put together a way of caring for young people, all young people, so that they could see their true worth. And so that I think falls on us as a community, as a Tongan community. And I see it. You can see it in our music. You can see it in our culture. You can see it in the sporting success. You can see it in academic success. Our children need to see podcasts like today, where they can see people like themselves, that have achieved in this society, so that they can believe in it. Because we reflect back what is capable for them to achieving. And you can see that in all the achievements that that's a way that a community can respond to institutional racism and prejudice.
Malo san ko tu fe ko ka isi fo la. Ko he ko fa mo ko kalama. Ko milite tanim. Ka ko tu ma o wa ko kalama Talanoa ka ko ma winga Talanoa pa ko fia. E lava le ki Talanoa ko ni. Pea ko whape ka ki motolo na mo mea mai ke Talanoa ko ino whelave pa mo Laulanu e ambia ko ka wai ngā whape wai ngā he poin ne rei na lawa mo haulawe pa mo toke tā. Ko tui koe programa hako te mau Talanoa ai koe hārewa ha mea he whai. Ke taulawa ai o tio pe ko hanga whainga ngā au e pe ko whakotutu. How can we overcome? How can we deal with such behavior? Discrimination at work and also at school. Oia, mo mea ka tau tau Fetokoni'aki e programa hako.